prescribing an enema for diarrhea. Certainly, tendencies in sociology have moved on since the Park Birdies area at Chicago. Nonetheless, Alinsky's initial trajectory reflected the preoccupations of the discipline during the interwar years. In an article published in the American Journal of Sociology in 1941, Alinsky provided a clear account of his approach. He described the wretched lives of those working in the slaughterhouses and packing houses of the back of the yards area. Their neighborhood was a byword for disease, delinquency, deterioration, dirt, and dependency. The traditional community organization would be of little value in such an area because it considered individual problems in isolation from each other and the community in isolation from the general social scene. Instead, by placing each community within its broad context, its limited ability to elevate itself by means of its own bootstraps could be acknowledged. He identified two basic social forces which might serve as the cornerstone of any effective community organization. These were the Catholic Church and organized labor. The same people that comprise the membership of a parish also form the membership of a union local. He got local organizations to come together to form the Back of the Yards Neighborhood Council. Membership did not just involve the church and the unions, but also the local chamber of commerce, the American Legion Post, as well as the leading businessmen, the social, the nationality, the fraternal, and the athletic organizations. Through the council, problems such as unemployment and disease were shown to be threats to all the people. Both labor unions and businesses depended upon local purchasing power. The various leaders learned to know one another as human beings rather than as impersonal symbols of groups which in many cases appeared to be of a holistic nature. Behind this was a people's philosophy that emphasized rights rather than favors and the need to rely on an organization built, owned, and operated by themselves to get their rights. This was obviously a completely different philosophy to Hayden's. Alinsky went out of his way to draw in local organizations. Hayden was worried that this kept ordinary people excluded and reinforced local power structures. At the time, many on the left would have feared working with the Catholic Church, which was deeply hostile to the atheistic Communist Party. Alinsky's self-definition as a radical was reflected as his biographer notes in his inclinations, convictions, and rhetoric and wishes, but less so in his actions, which took a more pragmatic form. He was prepared to force coalitions with whatsoever appeared appropriate. His role model was not so much the communist agitator, but the labor organizer. This was the heroic age of the American labor movement, led by John Lewis of the United Mine Workers, which had broken away from the sleepy American Federation of Labor dominated by elitist craft unions and formed the Confederation of Industrial Organizations, CIO. Lewis combined a strident anti-communist with a belief in a centralized state stabilizing and planning the economy. He provided dynamic leadership to the burgeoning labor movement with his tough and imaginative negotiating style, demonstrated to the full in the sit-down strike at the General Motors Flint plant in 1937. After Flint, other industries were wary of head-on confrontations. He was able to deal with U.S. Steel without making direct threats. He challenged the racial discrimination of Southern mine workers who argued that black workers would make do with lower wages to support their modest lifestyle. Within 2 years, the CIO had 3.4 million members. Alinsky met Lewis in July 1939 when he spoke on behalf of the Chicago packing workers. Lewis's daughter, Catherine, was on the board of Alinsky's Industrial Areas Foundation. Lewis was Alinsky's role model. He was egocentric and entered confrontations with relish and led with nerve and panache. Later, Alinsky would write an admiring biography from Lewis. He learned how to provoke and goad opponents, promote conflict, and then negotiate its resolution using power to its best advantage at all stages. Alinsky paid attention to the intellectual justifications for action and the rhetorical expression. He was impressed by the way Lewis managed to pursue a program which managed the establishment by associating the CIO with American ideals of fairness and justice. Similarly, Alinsky's own Argumentation sought to place objectives of his industrial area's foundation firmly with familiar sounding American political tradition. In 1946, Alinsky published his first book, Revel for Radicals, which became a surprising bestseller. The basic idea behind this was that the sort of techniques that had been used so effectively by the labor unions in the factories could be used within urban communities. As he put it, collective bargaining beyond the present confines of the factory gate. The radical was described as a militant idealist, someone who believes what he says, has the common good as the greatest personal value, genuinely and completely believes mankind takes on every struggle at his own, avoids rationalization and superficiality, and deals in fundamental causes rather than current manifestations. His goals were described in terms of a utopia where every individual's worth was recognized and potentially realized. All would be truly free politically, economically, and socially, and war, fear, misery, and demoralization would be eradicated. By contrast, liberals attracted Alinsky